Hello, Ralston community, friends, parents, students, teachers, and staff. It's a little odd for me not to be able to see you all, but thank you for being here. We're all excited for the 2021 school year, and we know we have a lot of questions. So this Ralston Town Hall meeting is to try to get ahead of some of those questions, and we won't have all of those answers, but we want to make sure that you know that we are working together on this and trying to be as transparent as humanly possible. With us on the panel today from Ralston, you have myself, Michael Doherty, who is the principal, Chuck Donovan, who is one of the assistant principals, and Methany Bozeman, who is the other assistant principal. So thank you for being here. And we also have some special guests, if you will, our cabinet members, Rui Bao, who is our CBO, Ching Pei Hu, who is our Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services and all-around kind of go-to person, Julie Eastburn, and our new superintendent, Dan DeGora. So thank you for being here. With that, I am going to turn it over to Dan.
All right. Good evening. Thanks, Mike. Good evening and welcome, Ralston families. I'm really glad that you're able to join us tonight. As Mike said, my name's Dan DeGora, and I'm honored to be serving as your new superintendent. In the perfect world, I'd be meeting you in person. However, these are some extraordinary times. As we begin tonight, I want to share that we'll be recording this town hall meeting. We'll post it on our website so that those who are unable to attend can still access the information. I do recognize that there was a conflict for many families. We want to make sure that they have the information. This year, we will begin the school year in a 100% full distance learning model with the goal of transitioning to a hybrid model following all established guidelines and protocols once it's safe to do so. We remain committed to a successful 2020-21 school year. And before we begin tonight, I'd like to recognize Trustees Koo and Trustee Leinbach, who are both in our audience tonight, listening in and hearing questions and concerns as they arise. Tonight, we'll split our evening roughly in half. The first half of our time will be spent on a presentation talking about safety protocols and instructional design. Then we'll shift the second half to Q&A. Questions can be sent directly to us via the chat. Pam, who is our moderator, will be monitoring the chat. We'll do our best to get through as many of those questions as possible. And as we see trends of questions we're not able to answer, we'll make sure that we get those answers out to you. And I will say, historically, we've done a couple of these town halls. We've typically gone a little bit over the halfway point in our presentation because we're able to see the chat and address some of those questions as they come up during our presentation. So with that, I would like to turn it over to my teammates. First up is Rui.
All right, thanks, Dan. Hello, everybody. So this presentation tonight is going to look familiar to those who were at the board meeting on July 23rd. Our goal with these town halls is to make the information we shared more widely accessible with the addition of some more school-specific components and, more importantly, time for some Q&A. So to begin, I wanted to introduce the guiding principles developed by our Board of Trustees for school reopening. These principles guide us in our development of all school reopening models, whether that is hybrid or distance. And our guiding principles are to prioritize safety, to ensure instructional quality, to facilitate effective and open communication, to promote consistency, and to foster reciprocal accountability. I won't linger too much on the specifics here other than to note that new guidance is constantly being updated by the CDC, the California Department of Public Health, the California Department of Education, and San Mateo County. And just know that we are consistently monitoring these updates to ensure that our protocols are following the guidelines. As you know, our Board of Trustees met on July 23rd and voted to adopt a dual instruction model as allowed by San Mateo County and the state. And so when we entered the state watch list, it meant that we will open under a full distance model. So I'm just going to breeze through and give a very quick overview of our health and safety section. Most of it pertains to our hybrid model. And since we are opening in full distance, I'm sure that most folks here are more curious about the instructional details. Just know that we are still actively planning for the hybrid model, as we anticipate that at some point between distance and whenever school can be fully in person, we will be in the hybrid model. So we want to still be actively planning towards that. When we think about the hybrid model, we're actively monitoring the governor's safe reopening criteria and what that means for both opening and closing schools once schools are open. We are also checking on a daily basis San Mateo specific data. And our hybrid model was developed with San Mateo's pandemic recovery framework's 4 pillars in mind. Specifically, that's health and hygiene, face coverings, physical distancing, and limited gatherings. And in terms of what that looks like at our campuses, it means rearranging our classrooms to ensure the stable cohorts of 12 to 15 students and spacing it out to ensure the physical distancing, as well as sanitizing daily using EPA recommended substances for treating COVID-19. We will be requiring face coverings on campus. We are working with the county and our healthcare partners around testing availability. And for staff entering campus, actually staff and students entering campus will require a temperature check. And even in distance learning, staff who are coming to campus will be required to undergo a self-certification as well as a temperature check. And the goal here is, even if you're working in your own classrooms, we do want to ensure a safe campus and work environment for everybody, even in distance learning. In thinking about the re-entry protocols, as well as the transition to hybrid, there are a number of things that we are keeping in mind, such as designated entry and exit locations, temperature checks, as I just mentioned, assigning desks, assigning bathrooms, and thinking about staggered schedules to maximize social distancing. I get a lot of questions around PPE, so I just wanted to give an update around what we have purchased. We are expecting that staff and students will provide their own primary mask, which is something that's now public health guidelines for leaving the home. But we will have backup masks available, both adult and child sized. We have N95s and gloves purchased for our nursing staff, and for our special education staff, movable plexiglass barriers, as well as the face shields with the cloth drapes under it. And then we've installed plexiglass barriers in our front offices and also have hand sanitizer stands for outdoors. With that, I will turn it back to Mike briefly to talk through some of the layouts that the Ralston staff have been looking at.
Thanks, Rui, and thank you for this time. Community, I want you to know that Chuck Donovan will be taking paternity leave. Friday is his last day, and so I'm going to let him actually speak on facilities, and I'll chime in if need be.
Thanks, Mike. So these pictures show a couple different classrooms in the U building on Ralston's campus that we set up and designed for socially distanced space. So all student desks are 6 feet apart, as well as 6 feet apart from the teachers. So we are able to safely accommodate students in the social distancing model on campus. So we did a U building classroom, a science wing classroom, as well as a B building classroom, and all of them have the ability to properly fit safely cohorts of 12 to 15 students in their classroom at a time.
Thanks. And as I mentioned, the hybrid planning is something that we're continuing to do, but in the meantime, I will turn it over to Ching Pei to cover the instructional model.
Good evening, everyone. Sorry about that little glitch going backwards. I was double checking something on one of the slides. So right now we are in this fully dialed up mode, and we are fully distant. As Dan opened the meeting with, we are committed to opening school when it is safe. We believe that students learn best when they are on campus with peers, interacting in person with not only peers, but adults as well. Unfortunately, our current health situation prevents us from offering that to students. You know, this is very difficult for families, particularly ones that have dual income families with parents working outside of the home, and we're going to have to work together as a community to get through this. We are fully scaled up. When it is safe, we will bring students back, and eventually we will be on campus again as a whole community. What we want you to be aware of are some of the guidelines and requirements from the state of California that help us create some consistency within our district and across classrooms. So this is the language of SB 98. I just want you to take a look at it. You don't need to hear me read the slide, but ultimately there's a minimum bar that everybody has to follow. We need to ensure things like live interaction, regular interaction, attendance monitoring, services being provided. So please note that what you're going to get in distance learning this fall is going to be far more robust than what we were able to offer in the spring, simply because we've had time to plan and adjust and learn. In the SB 98 language, there are several things that are required. One is daily live interaction, and this is two-way interaction. We've seen a lot of questions come through the various town halls. Does that mean that my teacher can record a lesson and that's considered live? No, the language is specific that it is two-way, meaning kids can ask questions. What we're engaging in right now is not a live interaction, since I'm just talking at you. There will be times when your teacher records a lesson and makes things available and pushes it out for the asynchronous learning. Not your entire day will not be live. Your entire day will not be guided by an adult. There will be a balance between synchronous learning and asynchronous learning. We will monitor student attendance. We did not have to monitor it in the fall. We got a little bit of a reprieve from the state saying, doesn't matter what your attendance is, we're going to fully fund you. In the fall, students who don't attend will add into our average daily attendance, and it will eventually equal lost money for the district. There are minimum requirements for instructional day. So for 8th, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, you will expect 4 hours of minimum of instruction from our staff. We will be providing special education services, as always, in a remote setting. What services you receive and how much might vary, given the needs of the students are different when they're at distance than when they are at home. And this is something that your 504 plan, IEP, case managers will work with you as a team to determine what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. For example, some students have supports around tolerance on the playground. There's no playground when you're at home, and so the services that support that won't be accompanying since you'll be at home, but you'll work with your team to reevaluate and determine how we can best support the students, and we will provide those services in a remote setting. We are required to monitor engagement, meaning how much work is being turned in, what percentage of work is completed in synchronous and asynchronous time, and we are required to follow up with families and students when students aren't participating. We understand that there are different circumstances at home, and particularly the older students who are a little bit more independent learners may not log in to every lesson every single day because of the home situation, but will finish their work. And we just ask that you please be in touch with your classroom teacher. Sorry, somebody decided to walk on the street, which is really displeasing to my large dog. Anyhow, we will be working with you. So if you have different circumstances, please be. And then we will help make sure you have connectivity. So you're going to see a survey coming soon. We're working out the details now, but we need to know who does not have internet access, because we will support you with that, as well as who does not have a device for their child. We will provide for students so that they can access, given that we're in distance learning and the only way for them to access is to have a device of some sort. We've been talking synchronous and asynchronous a lot, and I just want to make sure we have the definitions clear and a common understanding. Synchronous means learning at the same time. So even if you're not in the exact same room, you're going to be logged in together in the same virtual space. This way, someone can raise their hand and pose a question, teacher can give feedback, and there's a live dialogue back and forth. Asynchronous learning is when the learning happens separately. It can happen at different times. So this might be where I'm going to post a lesson and I'm going to say to my students, okay, we're going to log off now, but between now and tomorrow, I want you to watch this video I made for you, answer these questions, and turn your work in on Google Classroom. That allows for flexibility for families. It allows you to figure out when in the schedule makes sense for your child to do the work. but also allows a little bit of a break from the screen. Even with our older kids, we want to be very careful how much time we're staring at the screen all day long. In a regular classroom, there's a cadence between synchronous and asynchronous learning. Teachers will deliver a lesson and give kids independent practice time while they check in. So even when they're live in person on campus, your teachers aren't, thankfully, talking at your students for the entire 54-minute period. Some things that you can expect to see as we improve upon our distance learning this fall: we will follow up with traditional grades with a full report card. It won't be an in progress with a note of learning behaviors. It will be progress monitoring with credit for all of the work that is turned in. This is part of our requirements from SB 98, that we assess students, we progress monitor, and we communicate progress, that we utilize our grade level appropriate, standards aligned, rigorous curriculum. So you will see our base curriculum that students access in the classroom being accessed from home during fall distance learning. You'll see a minimum of 4 hours of instruction every single day with regular, scheduled, predictable synchronous learning time. And a couple of things that really the central office is able to support better, because there's some consistency of platforms, is not only professional development for the teachers and support for them, but family tutorials. How do you access? Where do you go? Where is the one single place we're going to go to get information, so we know? So we're not trying to figure out, I have 7 teachers with 7 different formats in 7 different places. Some of you have younger children and have probably already seen this if you attended other town halls, or maybe you're just choosing to come to one. We have designated some specific communications. So for parent-facing tools for the younger students, we are asking that Seesaw be the primary communication tool. Teachers on the back end will still be using the Google Suite and all of the tools, but in terms of sharing out, it will be through Seesaw. In grades 4 or 5, they're going to use primarily their Google Classroom, and at Ralston, the communication tool will be School Loop. The learning management system on the back end, you'll see we have Google Classroom integrated with Illuminate, which is where we do some online testing, which allows us to do to have a safe protocol for students to be able to test and turn in. It's a really nice tool we can use to mark grades and also provide instant access. Most of the Ralston teachers use School Loop to do a grade book, and families are very familiar with that. So I would expect to continue to see that. For families who have been with us and have your Illuminate Parent Portal activated already, you'll know that for Ralston families, mostly what's on there is past state test results. But as we go into distance learning, with this new Google Classroom integration, I would expect you to be able to see more information, and we're going to train our teachers, but you will get your communication through School Loop. And then there are several other tools so that we can supplement our learning. Again, our base curriculum is going to be our adopted materials. We have science, social studies, math, English language arts, world language curricula that our teachers know how to teach and know how to deliver. What we're going to do is work on the technical aspect of how do we do this in distance. Our teachers are expert teachers. They know how to teach their content area. We're going to be able to see your kids every day during the school year, which means that they're going to be able to get their full instruction instead of trying to go every other day, 1 quarter at a time with a couple of content areas. Logistically, it is easier to do distance learning, even though I think we are missing a bit of the human connection. Some characteristics of live distance learning as you look ahead to what your fall is going to look like. I just want to be really clear that we do have instructional blocks laid out, but we also know that teachers need a balance of live and synchronous instruction with students as well as asynchronous time. Your student may be engaged in asynchronous learning because your teacher is offering small group instruction to another group of students. Likewise, when your child is receiving small group instruction and check-ins, the other part of their class may be engaged in asynchronous learning. And so it's a balance of how we make sure students' needs are met, how students aren't staring at the screen all day long, and ensuring that we can continue to differentiate instruction and meet the needs of all of our students. Here's a sample schedule for Ralston. We're still working out all of the kinks with our teachers union, but ultimately what we're proposing, because it's a lot to say you have 7 classes in a day. Our students typically go to 6 periods every day. We're proposing a block schedule where you see your teachers every other day for each period. So you'll see your teachers Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, but you'll be engaged with teachers all day, every day. There will, of course, continue to be homework in middle school. So it'll be nice to get out of school a little bit earlier so that there's time to do the independent asynchronous practice that is linked to the day's instruction from the day before. Some of you might be wondering, okay, I know what my teachers are doing. They're engaging with students all day. What about all the other support people that we see on campus? One of the things that, so I've laid out a table here for you so you can see all the different personnel that we do have on campus all the time. We have educational specialists who work with RSP students. We have reading specialists. We have music. We have special program staff. We have the music prep and science prep is for elementary school because you guys have music and science is built into your 7-period day. But we have all of our staff. Everyone is staying full-time. Anybody who provided support services to your student pre-COVID will continue to provide support to your student. It will just be through a virtual setting, through a remote setting. We have school counselors who are going to be supporting in the classroom. One of the things we want to be really clear on this year as we come back is this is a new normal. This is traumatic. Our kids, particularly our adolescents, really need the human connection to their peers. And so, yes, academics are important. Yes, we're going to progress monitor. Yes, we're going to see how far behind or not they are. And we're going to adjust our instruction to ensure that they're ready for the next grade level. But yes, we are also going to be paying attention to their social emotional learning and their whole child. It's not all about reading, writing, and arithmetic. We want to make sure that we have happy, healthy kids who are engaged and who are able to absorb the learning that's coming. So you will definitely see social emotional learning supports throughout the year. What can you do to help at home? This is something that has come up. So we had put this out in the at-home learning information from the spring, but I thought I'd put some visuals to it. It's really important, I think, particularly adolescent students who, if they're anything like my son who's going into 6th grade, will sprawl out anywhere and not care and really not take care of schoolwork in a very responsible manner. It's important that they have a dedicated workspace. It doesn't have to be their own room, their own desk, their own space, but it should be a consistent spot where they go to work during the school day that's separated. That's going to help with the boundaries of when does school start and end and when does relaxing at home start and end. I think, one of my friends noted that we went from shelter in place and working from home to living at work. What we don't want our kids to feel like is that they're living at school. And so having that dedicated space where school happens that they can leave at the end of the day is going to be important. Even though your kids are moody teenagers, it's important to check in and find out how things are going. Are they checking on School Loop? Do they know where their assignments are? Do they know how to access help? Do they know where the Zoom links are for, or the Google Meets links are for all of their periods for the day? This little yellow icon is about having a family routine, right? What is the predictable structure for the day? I think it's particularly important so we don't feel like we're living at school or living at work, that we delineate the start and end of the day. When do we take breaks? Where do we go? You might also feel that your children are processing things slower than maybe their normal rate. There's a lot going on. This is traumatic for students to not see their friends, particularly at a developmental stage when their whole life is their peers. So it just is a reminder to give your children the time to think and to figure it out in the space, just to process everything that's going on. And then, of course, part of that is, are we getting out and into the fresh air and getting enough exercise? Sure, we can jump on our Peloton and do a workout, but there is magic. I know this sounds cheesy. There is magic to seeing the ocean, and we live close to the water. Whether you go to the bay, you do a hike, you're out in nature. That is healing to us, and I think it's important that we make time to ensure that our children are exercising and taking advantage of our beautiful weather here in the Bay Area. Social networks are important. We are lucky that we can tap into things like FaceTime and Google and Zoom and create social gatherings for our kids so they can play together, talk together, have time when mom and dad aren't hearing everything. As much as we need a break from them, they need a break from us. So it's important to help them navigate the world of social interactions using technology. And if you feel safe to have a social bubble, then we certainly want you to, keep that in mind, because that helps all of us to have social connections. And the final piece of that is we have to work together in partnership to make sure our students stay good digital citizens. They are still young. They still need our guidance to know that everything that they do online stays online forever, and we need to be careful that we're not leaving a digital footprint that we're not going to be proud of in a year or 2 or 10. We will work with our students. We have new curriculum this year embedded in some of the supports that we were able to purchase. Thank you to School Force and to the community for your incredible support, because of that, we were able to purchase all that technology you saw a few slides back. So we'll work together and make sure that we teach formal skills. How do I stay logged in? How do I, turn on the monitor, turn on the camera so my teacher knows I'm looking? Don't be distracted by extra tabs. What's appropriate to say in the chat and what's not appropriate to say in the chat function. These are all skills that are going to be really important that we're going to have to teach and practice. And together we can make sure our students are following along and developing as good, strong adolescents. And I'm going to turn it over to Dan to talk a little bit about next steps.
Dan, I'm hoping I can jump in there if that's all right. If somebody can go back to that slide that Chingpei was just working on.
Yeah.
Because I want to talk about the community piece, right? Everything we've done has been in person in the past, and I think we've done a great job working with our PTA and our teachers to get a really good orientation set up for new incoming students. Well, we're now having to transition and figure out a new way to do that, because we're not going to have a hot dog barbecue and a big gathering in the gym and then have the students go into their homerooms, but we do still feel a lot of those pieces are very important. So we want we want our students to be able to know some of the kids that are in their class, to make a connection to their teachers and to their administrators and the counselors. So we're working on orientation currently, different platforms, but the idea of orientation is, we're going to do teacher introductions. We're going to do our administration introductions. We're going to do a presentation about some expectations and what Ralston has kind of looked like in the past and what we imagine that it's going to be looking like this year. We do understand that we're going to be making adjustments on the fly, but we want students to make a connection to their school, right? This is their school. If they're sixth graders, they're going to be there for 3 years, and we all imagine we will be in school again at some point. So I want them to be able to say, Ralston is my school of choice. I love Ralston. It's great. And the facilities are fantastic. So if students haven't been on the campus, we're going to do a virtual tour. So hopefully that turns out well. Fingers crossed on that one, because we haven't done that one before. But we're also looking at doing breakout rooms with the homeroom teachers. So if your student has Mr. Pickett for homeroom, we're looking at having Mr. Pickett do a breakout session where he can say hello, give a little bit of some basic expectations for them, so they know, come that first day of school, when they see Mr. Pickett, he's not going to be a stranger. It's going to be awkward enough. So we want to try to get in front of that as much as humanly possible. And this is something that we've been trying to work on since there's a lot of different moving pieces. We are planning on doing it at night rather than at the 2 o'clock time frame that we've done it in the past, because it seems like we'll get more people to actually be able to show up for that. So stay tuned. I will be sending more information out to everybody on the nuts and bolts as we move forward. And administration will be making ongoing videos, tutorials, hellos, funny jokes, or what I think is funny jokes. You might not, your kids might not, but we're going to go with funny jokes. We also have a program called Web, where everybody belongs. We weren't 100% sure we were going to be able to keep that with a hybrid model, but we've made headway and we are going to continue. So Mr. Alan Bean is our teacher for Web. He has a great group of students that had to actually apply, do an interview, so they can show that they really want to be there. This program is a mentorship for our older students to our newer students. So 8th graders generally to our 6th graders. We do have some 7th graders that are mixed in. Once they are back with Mr. Bean, they'll be making some fun videos from the kids' perspective. And then those leaders will also be reaching out in small groups to every new 6th grade student. We generally do something a little different for the 7th and 8th graders because 7th and 8th graders historically have not wanted to be with all the 6th graders for an orientation. So we try to do something a little bit different for them. But we're going to hammer this over and over because we want our students to know what Ralston is, what to expect, have an adult to reach out to, make some friends, because all of that stuff is extremely important. So again, keep your eyes out for communication on that. You will see a first video from us tomorrow. Hopefully it goes really well and it's not as funny as when I watch it, but you're going to see a lot of that stuff, and we are going to target the students. So it's not going to be targeted towards the adults. It will be targeted towards our students.
Great, thank you, Mike. All right, so I'm going to quickly wrap up our slides and then we're going to take some Q&A. So we often are getting the question about transitioning from the watch list. And yes, we are planning for that. A priority has always been for us to move towards in-person learning when it's safe to do so. This is generally the traditional way that we've done business. We have always feel that connecting with students in person is optimal. And we're really having to rethink how we go about educating our students, right? So looking at best practices in digital distance learning. But looking at the future, we do want to get back to that in-person model eventually. We believe that once San Mateo County is taken off the watch list, it's potentially a 6 to 7 week process of transitioning from the watch list to being able to consider providing hybrid instruction. Coming off of the watch list, you have to be off the watch list for 14 consecutive days to be eligible to move into the hybrid model. We would resurvey our families. We would take a temperature check to see how many families want to continue distance learning, how many would like to come back to the in-person. We recognize that there are choices out there. We want to provide those choices not only for our families, but for our staff to the greatest extent possible. Again, 5 to 6 weeks, best case scenario, but we will also take a look at the timing of that. The timing is important. We think of, how do holidays fall? How do, the winter kind of sick season, flu season, how does that play into the decision? How does our quarter and trimester report card periods factor in? So those will all be considered, but once we come off the watch list, we'll start considering that. We'll start doing community outreach for our staff and for our community. Next slide, if you will. So we get a lot of questions, especially with Ralston, right? Going from a distance learning schedule where kids are in all of the periods to a in-person hybrid model, an AB model, where half of our kids are coming to school each day and half of our kids are at home each day, right? That is a pretty significant schedule change, and it will be something that we will have to work through and figure out best next steps in terms of moving forward. But traditionally, we always want to look at class size ratios. We need to make sure for our teachers that those ratios remain consistent. We also want to provide consistency for our students. Shifting from one class, one teacher to that same class, another teacher is not preferred. We want to make sure that we provide as much consistency as we can. That said, middle schoolers are a little bit more used to changing classes, and it's not quite so impactful as for the elementary kids, but we still keep that into consideration. When we think about going between models from in-person, specifically in-person and on-roading students and bringing them on to in-person learning, we have to make sure that we're cognizant of exposures, making sure that we can track what happens if somebody becomes ill or becomes sick. We want to make sure that we're creating the safest conditions possible for our students and for our staff. I should also mention the watch list. We could come off of the watch list and other conditions not quite yet be right. For example, coming off the watch list and moving into person does trigger some staff testing to have put into place, frequent testing and monitoring of our staff. We need to make sure that the county is able to support that as well. And again, we're always looking to optimize transitions and shifts. There is probably no perfect time to shift, but always doing the best that we can to make transitions when best appropriate for our students and our families and our staff. So with that, we're going to open it up to Q&A. I know our chat bar has been going, and we've been answering a lot as we've been going. While Pam's kind of navigating that, I'm actually going to pose a couple that I've seen to the Ralston staff. Kind of really big picture. I'll throw a lot of things out there. There's been a ton of questions about electives, kind of that normal onboard question that we get at middle school. There's been questions about math placement, class sizes, and I already said electives. If you want to start there, Pam will look through our questions.
Okay.
Let me just take the math placement one first, and then you can talk about the others. As I'm seeing all these questions, Jerome and I had this conversation. We believe we sent out placement in June, and I'm really sorry. Because with all of these questions, my gut is that it wasn't a glitch with all of you. It's that we failed to do the send that we thought we did. We will send that out to you this week. We have all of your placement information. We are only offering AS Math this year. We are not offering AS ELA because as we transition from hybrid, in-person back to hybrid, there is no way we can handle the complication of having two sets of leveled classes within our grade level. So I'm sorry that those placement letters did not go out. I thought, how strange, nobody's emailing me questions. But of course the summer got away with us with all sorts of other planning. You'll get that soon.
Thanks, Ching-Pei. Ching-Pei, and actually, I had talked about this. We did think it was a glitch in just a small group, but obviously we need to send it out again. So thank you, Ching-Pei and Jerome. One of the questions was about electives. Electives are based on our teachers, right? And sometimes we do have teachers leave, and unfortunately, we can't always find another teacher to come in and teach an elective. And so I would say almost all of our electives are the same. We do have a couple new ones coming in. With the situation that we're in, culinary arts will not be offered this year. We don't see that working in a remote setting. And if we were to come back in hybrid, there's just too many shared utensils and shared space. So that's one I can tell you for sure. We will not be offering. We are offering music and band. We're going out on a limb and taking a risk and going with choir. We don't know how that would look if we do come back into an in-person model, but with a remote model, we're going for it. And we have a lot of kids who have requested it and a teacher who feels that she can do a really good job with that particular class. So most of our electives are offered. We are losing culinary arts. We will still be offering French, and we will still be offering Spanish. So none of that has changed.
Okay, so on that same vein, people are asking what PE was going to look like and science, hands-on science activities. How will that be handled?
So I'll speak. I can tell you I've been in contact with a few of my science teachers who over the summer have been trying to take some PDs to figure out how to do some of these labs, right? Because that's it's probably the most the area that kids have the most fun in science, right, is actually blowing something up or creating something or watching lava come out, right? So how do we get those materials in students' hands? How can we recreate? The few teachers that did do some PDs that are sharing with their colleagues have found certain labs that can be done at home. So mom or dad, you'll actually be the partner a lot of the times for those labs, but these can be done with things that are lying around the house, right? Go outside, grab some dirt, get an old 2-liter bottle, things like that. So I can't speak more specifically on what those labs are and activities, but there has been some development on what supplies can we use at home for students to actually recreate some of these activities that we would do in class. With PE, I'm going to let somebody else talk about PE, if that's okay. Chuck?
So PE is going to be offered in a distance model. We're going to be working off of SB 98 for our guidelines. That was done in the spring, and we're looking to bulk up that program overall. So it will be in a distance model, but they'll also be needing to log the exercise as well as filling out a log and following along with that daily interaction that's required by SB 98. So still hammering it out, but that gives you a general idea.
And Pam, I saw a couple other questions. So again, I'm gonna just kind of keep talking since this is kind of Ralston specific. Schedules generally would go out the day before school. We give homeroom and then your full schedule is given in school that day. Things are gonna be a little different now. Behind the eight ball with getting the schedule done. I hope I will have this completely done by this upcoming week. That way this weekend we can look at possibly getting it out to everybody, making School Loop live. If we're not sending an email out, at least do a tutorial on how to access the schedule in School Loop. Sometimes there are some last minute changes though. So as I tell you that, you know, maybe you'll be able to see it on School Loop, there could be some possibilities that we make some changes on the weekend and then all of a sudden you have, you know, 2 different first periods or 2 math classes. Well, that's because there's a change. So I want to say, you know, don't freak out. School Loop takes 24 hours to refresh. So if on Saturday you have 2 first periods, on Sunday you will not because the change has then been made official. So we want to get those schedules in your hand as soon as possible because one, we won't see students in person to say, hey, Mr. Doherty, I don't have a science class, or, oh, why do I have 2 first periods? Oh, come in my office and let's change it. I'd rather give you all those schedules ahead of time just in case there are some mistakes that we didn't catch, and we still have a little bit of time to rectify those mistakes. So I'm not going to, you know, guarantee you that you have your schedules on Friday afternoon or Saturday morning, but the goal is for you to be able to have access to School Loop and those schedules by next weekend. And that's the big one I wanted to talk about was the actual schedule.
How about how students will get their textbooks, Chromebooks, those types of things?
It's me again, I guess. I'm the talking head here, guys, so I'm sorry about this. Last spring, we had everyone return their materials, and we did it via homeroom and a drive-through style in our parking lot. If you've been to Ralston, we have a big parking lot. We won't have buses, so we basically do 3 different lanes. We stagger homerooms out, and you know, last year it was collecting materials. This year it'll be more about I have Mr. Ekstrom's homeroom. These are the books that Mr. Ekstrom's needs. There might be instruments there. There's going to be supplies and a little pencil pouch sort of thing. There might be a guitar if the student is taking guitars, but we will have everything ready for each student as they come through. This is going to take us some time, so it's going to be a couple day type of venture, but we will do it via homeroom, and it'll be drive-through style in 3 different lanes to where hopefully we have enough staff. I'm sure we will because teachers are going to want to see their students. So it'll be like 6th grade on Monday, and that's just a hypothetical of days. 6th grade on Monday, 7th grade on Tuesday, 8th grade on Wednesday, and we would do 30-minute blocks, 40-minute blocks of each homeroom. That way we can accommodate everybody's time. We also know that we set a time. Our times don't always work for everybody, so we'll have some alternative times for people to come through and pass out those supplies.
There are some questions about how to keep students engaged and ensure they aren't doing other online activities during class time.
Okay, back at me again. I'm liking this. One, I got to say, good question. I think that's the question that we all ask ourselves a little bit. We have parents and students sign a technology agreement, acceptable use policy. We need parents to partner with us to make sure they're talking to their students about what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. Admin will be doing virtual classroom walkthroughs at times and kind of checking in on kids and popping in breakout rooms and so forth. You know, but I can't give you a more specific answer than that because I don't know. I don't know what that answer is. We're going to monitor it the best we can. We're going to work with the parents and work with the students, do some individual talks with them if need be, and make sure that their teachers are developing good relationships and good community rapport for their classes, so students feel engaged and they feel like they need to focus and they're not going to jump on whatever else they jump on, TikTok or some other type of platform there. So that's going to be a learning process for as well. We think we're going to be doing a good job, but I've worked in middle school long enough. We're going to have some incidences that do come up, and then we'll adjust what we do and ramp it up to make it even better.
Mike, another thing is that we have or have used the Go Guardian platform last spring, which has helped us to better facilitate and monitor what students are doing during their instructional time.
Yeah. Thanks, Chuck, for that. You know, and as you say that, I remember other things because we do a lot of stuff, right? We also have a PBIS model, as every school in our district does, to catch kids doing good things, right? We don't want to focus on the negative. So if they're performing well in their video conferencing or whatever activity, we are still going to be recognizing them with little prizes. It won't be like a front of the line pass now, so we're going to get creative on what we're doing. But we want to have some incentives for students to also be working
on. Okay, there's questions on if there will be similar instructions between the teachers in the same subject, so that if you are moving from distance learning to hybrid and you get a different teacher, if you will be in the same place.
Similar educational experiences are key, right? And they're important. Some of the teachers do work more closely than other teachers, but alignment is definitely something we keep pushing and pushing and pushing every single year, because a student could have left from Nesbitt and came to Ralston, or had their finger broken and can't do band and needs to change some classes and some teachers around. So we want our teachers to be offering and exposing our students to all the same standards, which they should because they're Common Core standards, but we also want them to be looking at certain projects that are the same. In saying that, every teacher has a passion, right? And every teacher has a different style. So there is some flexibility for teachers to go deeper in certain areas because they have more knowledge there, they feel more comfortable, or they want to push. So everything will not be lockstep is what I'm going to get at, right? We do expect it to be very similar and much more aligned than it has been in the past.
There's quite a few questions on how the transition from distance learning to hybrid, what it will look like, and on whether the move to hybrid will change the amount of instruction students receive, moving from semesters to quarters.
I feel like that's a Ching Pei question.
I'm sorry, I was answering a question in chat. Could you repeat that, Pam?
Okay. There's questions on how the transition from distance learning to hybrid will work and whether there will be less instruction during hybrid.
Yes.
With
Okay.
the move from semesters to quarters.
I saw lots of questions about exact percentages. Okay, I'm going to address the first one. The transition is something that we are planning for, and it is going to depend a little bit on when in the year the transition is able to happen. We will, when we come back to hybrid, have to reschedule students. And if half the year is left, then ultimately what you can prepare for is we're going to take that year and that half of a year and then split it in half and say during this period, your children will get math and social studies for a quarter of the remaining of the year, so an eighth of the school year. Math and social studies, because then the next set of the next 2 quarters, you're going to get English language arts and science plus an elective. We would move into that 3-period hybrid model where you're on one day, off one day. You're getting it for half of the instructional calendar, however many days that is. It will be very tricky. It is not ideal for anybody. I hesitate to say an exact percentage, regardless of which model we use. Yes, when in that case, you're going to, let's say there are 90 days left of the school year, you're going to get live instruction for 45 of them, 22 in one set of subject areas and 23 in another set of subject areas. It's going to be less time in front of your teacher, but it's also fewer students in the class, so maybe moving at a faster pace, plus supplemented by independent learning and individual practice on your at-home learning days. So while it feels like you're getting a lot less instruction, you may not actually get that same loss in learning. It will be slower, and we're going to adjust. This is why part of what we're doing is continual progress monitoring, checking in to make sure our students are getting the key skills so that they're ready to go to the next grade level. If it turns out that, I think one of the things that keeps coming up, whether it's here in conversation or on chat groups online or parent support groups, we have to remember our children aren't behind. This is something that is happening globally. And if their whole grade level is behind, then nobody's behind. We're going to adjust, and we're going to make sure we're addressing the key standards and skills so that they're ready to grow. And we're going to make sure we're addressing the whole child. The other piece too is that percentage. Yes, so in distance learning, we are able to provide you a little bit more consistency. The children will see their teachers 3 times a week rather than, and they'll see all 7 teachers. We're going to do longer instructional blocks on every other day so that we minimize the Zoom fatigue on any given day. But over the course of 2 days, they'll see seven classes. And then on Wednesday, they'll see everybody. And then Thursday and Friday, they'll see 2 teachers. They'll see their teachers over 2 days again. There will be homework at middle school. They will follow up and work. I had mentioned earlier, they're going to have a shorter instructional day. Their school day is going to be a little bit shorter, which gives them more time to work on asynchronous learning and reinforce the practice and skills. So again, even though it feels like we're going 60% in live teaching, because our kids are so capable, we're lucky where we are. They're so well prepared, and our teachers are good teachers. They're going to be able to do a lot of independent practice, and not new learning by themselves, but practice and reinforcement, which is so important as we get into these higher level classes, that they'll still be able to continue at a strong instructional pace. If I were to guess, I would probably say they're going to get 75% of the lessons they typically get, but I don't think that means they're going to get 75% of the skills. I don't think it's a perfectly linear equation when it comes to student learning.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Oops, I was just going to go ahead and jump in. A few questions I've seen coming up around healthy and safe practices when we are able to come back, or should we be able to come back to hybrid model. We will continue to follow all of the California Department of Public Health, San Mateo Pandemic Framework, Recovery Framework, and San Mateo Health guidelines. The same things that we typically practice just as adults will be in place at our schools. Face coverings, particularly at our middle schools where our students are older, they will be required to wear face coverings, as will their teachers and adults. Face coverings are not a substitute for social distance. We will continue to maintain social distance as Mike was sharing about the class placement, keeping kids apart to the greatest extent possible. Those will all be important things that we keep into place. Again, coming back into a hybrid model, there is some requirements for staff testing. We do have some specific protocols. Should there be exposures, should there be case of COVID with students or staff, in terms of notification of cohorts, notification of the school community, and notifications of potentially direct contact. So those things will be in place when we bring our students back to campus. Again, I'm going to just reiterate, the safety of our students and our staff is of utmost importance. When we don't feel safe, it's really difficult to learn. So we'll continue to monitor the situation. We'll maintain our status quo, and when it's safe and ready to do so, we'll make those considerations. Pam, we're coming close to the time. How about another question or two?
Okay, so there was a couple questions about email distribution list. Wondering if emails have gone out from the school because they haven't received anything, or how they can sign up to receive emails?
Yeah, we've found that out. Yes, there have been 2 messages that have gone out. The first message got some replies, and it looked like it was a small cohort from one specific elementary. Thought we fixed that. Sent another one out. Got just about the same amount of emails saying, "Hey, we didn't receive anything. This was forwarded." So we are aware. We think that everything has been fixed at this point. So if you're not getting a video tomorrow afternoon, something like that, I would say, reach out to me and say, "Hey, Mr. Doherty, we still don't have anything." That means we still do have an issue, but I am sending at least a weekly message out, if not more. As we get closer, I'll probably send other reminders out, and timelines and other specifics as we go. So you do not need to do anything besides look out for something, and if you don't get it, then I would ask that you reach out to me or Chuck or Methany to let us know that you still have not received anything. And we're going to do a tutorial on School Loop. So somebody asked about that. How do you do it? A lot of you could just go on to School Loop, our website, and there's a button that says register and kind of go through that process, but we will do a video walking you through that as well to get you onto that system.
And one final question that has come up a few times is, can people request their students be with friends, or is it possible for groups of kids from previous schools to be grouped together so that they're not all in with brand new students?
Go ahead, Chingpei.
No, I'm wait. This is a
Okay.
question.
You're waiting.
I would
The general line in middle school is you can always request, but I can't guarantee that those requests will be met. Certain students have core academics, and then their electives change, and you might have an advanced standing math student and an orchestra student. So you can always request, but I will never guarantee that I will be putting all of your students or 2 students in that same class. Sometimes it happens, it works, it's like magic, and then other times it's just not possible. So you can request, but I can't guarantee that it's going to be met.
This is where I think distance learning gives a little bit of more flexibility, because with 7 periods in distance learning, the school is going to schedule kids into their advanced math class and then their regular English language arts and then the electives of their choice, rather than saying we have to find 15 students and keep them together for the entirety of their time together. So period 1 is going to be 30 kids. Period 2 is going to be 30 kids. There might be some overlap. There will probably be some overlap. I mean, just knowing how master schedules go, but at least there are 7 opportunities for your students to make friends, have people that they know in their cohort with them, rather than I got 15 and I'm stuck with them for the remainder of the quarter. One of the questions that I saw come up a lot still has to do with schedules. We don't have the details on the schedules. We are still working through those. And I promise you, as soon as we have a signed agreement and some consistency, we will let you know what time school's starting and ending, how many blocks you're going to have, what that looks like. All we can say that we know for sure, because this is what SB 98 requires, is that you will have live interaction with your teacher on a daily basis. So for 4 periods a day, your teachers and your students will have interaction. They may choose to have all 30 at once. They may choose to split the 30 into groups of 5 and have 6 little sessions, just have smaller group interaction. That's going to be up to the teacher, and they're going to communicate that with you. This is partially why we're laying out what is the communication platform, so there's some consistency. As soon as we have details, we'll share.
Great. Thank you, Chingpei. One more question I'm just going to ask you, because I have seen it a couple times in the chat. The concern about academics and the amount of content students will receive, 50%, 100%, somewhere in between. If you can share some thoughts about how we're doing our best to cover the whole scope and sequence of the school year.
So our teacher leaders have been working hard all summer, coming up with some scope and sequence. We have a STEM coach who's been working with the science department. I have a math teacher lead and English language arts teacher lead from Ralston, who works also with the teachers from Nesbitt and Sandpiper. We do have some pacing guides that we're following. Our teachers intend to follow their regular pacing guide at middle school. What's going to look a little bit different is the collaboration amongst the grade levels to really determine what does that daily implementation look like. We do have a consistent English language arts curriculum. I know some of you are asking about advanced standing in 7th and 8th grade. We talked at length at the board meeting in May, I think it was May 14th, about doing away with AS, ELA in 6th grade, because instructionally it is not the best decision. And we were planning on phasing this out for 6th, 7th, and 8th over the next 3 years, because we do have a really strong English language arts program where our teachers have already come up with the consistent units that they're going to teach. And then within the program, within one classroom, teachers can assign Chuck a higher level reading and Mike a lower level reading based off of their individual Lexile level. So there's no reason why Chuck and Mike need to be in different English language arts classes. So the alignment that we have spent the last year coming up with in English language arts is going to make for strong instruction across the board. And our math department works equally well together, as does our science department and social studies department. So it's always a work in progress. This is something that's a challenge, whether we're in person or in distance. And we are, one of the things that you're going to see is your instructional day for your students is going to be shorter. We don't have an agreement yet, but I can predict that. I've got a crystal ball on that one. But that's to allow our teachers the time to collaborate and plan and prep so that the time that they are live with your students is really meaningful and strong.
Okay, with that, I'm gonna thank everybody for joining us tonight. I'm gonna thank our panelists. I really appreciate all of you joining the community tonight. One thing I will say is, so we had our leadership retreat this past Monday and Tuesday, and the theme of our retreat was Better Together. And we're all experiencing a certain amount of trauma, quite honestly, going through these transitions. Balancing our home and our work lives, trying to figure out how we're going to care for our children while maintaining our professional responsibilities, and just how we're going to adjust. And, just thinking back about the best way to go about that, and that's really community, relying on one another, supporting one another, having patience and tolerance with one another. And I definitely recognize our summer has been up and down, and it's not been the normal summer that we've been used to. And I think that's important to recognize. It's important to recognize that our kids, our students are going through challenges, some of which they might be expressing and some of which they might not be expressing. So just being aware of that. I know I've been aware of how I even respond to my own two boys as I'm kind of addressing my personal stresses and whatnot. But just know that we're all in this together, and we will be successful in the end if we work together. And I think that's really important to always think through. In terms of partnerships, I know this is a middle school group. Our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders probably not so much. They want to be on their own, but we are working through with our child care partners. If that's something you partake or have younger kids, we're working with them to utilize our facilities better and be able to offer more. Again, I'm going to throw out a big thanks to our school force and you. You donated to school force. You've made their fundraiser a huge success, and all of those funds benefit our kids, whether it be platforms, whether it be additional supports or services or enrichment. Those are all the things that make the quality education that your children receive in regular times or distance learning times. It's all good stuff. So hang in there. We're all in this together. Again, I want to thank the community for sticking with us, for going through those ups and downs with us. Know that there's more communication coming out from your site leaders. Our principals and APs are back in the swing of things. Our teachers are not officially back in the swing of things, but are getting in the swing of things, right? We're all preparing. It's been one of those summers. So have a great evening, a great last couple of weeks of summer. Get that last minute rest and relaxation in, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. Thank you so much.